Hello everyone, welcome to In Litchfield. I'm your host, John Latsha. Before I begin tonight's topic of the pipeline, I just want to talk about some current events and some government meetings going on in the town of Litchfield. So let's start with that. On Saturday, June 27th, is the Strawberry Festival at the Litchfield Presbyterian Church from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Strawberries are locally grown at McQuestion Farm here in Litchfield. On Wednesday, July 8th and August 12th is movie night at the Aaron Cutler Library in Litchfield. Every second Wednesday of the month, they show a popular, newly released DVD film. The movie starts at 7 p.m. Call the circulation desk to ask questions or find out what the latest film will be by calling 424-4044. That's 424-4044. On Monday, July 13th through Friday, July 17th, is Summer Thunder Kids Club at Open Doors Fellowship from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., ages 5 through 12. They're going to have Bible stories, games, crafts, and snacks will be available. Register at www.odcf-newhampshire.com. That's www.odcf-newhampshire.com. Or call 424-9240. That's 424-9240. On Thursday, July 23rd, there's live music on the lawn at the Aaron Cutler Library here in Litchfield. Starts at 7 p.m. for a free live concert on the library lawn, while you enjoy the music of the 39th Army National Band. Call the circulation desk at the library with any questions at 424-4044. That's 424-4044. We have some government meetings upcoming here at Town Hall. First is on Monday, June 22nd, is the Board of Selectmen meeting. The meeting starts at 6 p.m. Public input starts at 6:30. On Tuesday, June 23rd, we have the Recreation Commission at 7:30. On Thursday, July 2nd at 7 p.m. at Town Hall, we have the Conservation Commission. On Tuesday, July 7th at 7 p.m., we have the Planning Board. And on Wednesday, July 8th at 7 p.m., we have the Zoning Board meeting. I would like to congratulate the Campbell High School girls softball team as well as the Campbell High School boys baseball team. The Campbell High School girls softball team recently won their third straight Division III crown by defeating Mountain Regional High School 7-6 in 8 innings. And the Campbell High School boys baseball team extended its winning streak to 31 games. Can you imagine? 31 games, which is a state record. Congratulations to both teams. What a great thing for our community. Now that we've finished the government meetings and the current events going on in the town of Litchfield, we're going to get to our topic tonight. And our topic is the proposed pipeline coming through the town of Litchfield. I have a prop to show you of what size the pipeline will actually be going through the town of Litchfield. And I have that right here. Okay? This is how big the pipe will be going through the town of Litchfield. Okay? 36 inches wide. It's going to be buried 3 feet under the ground, and it's going to be covered also with 24 inches of consolidated rock. Okay? So when you think, some people think of 36 inches, it's really not that big, but take a look at it, okay? This is the pipe that will be going through the town of Litchfield if the plan passes, all right? And this, from my point of view, is very serious business, okay? We have some schools that are in or near the incinerator zone of this pipeline, so we should all be taking part in trying to keep this out of our community, okay? So here it is right here, 36-inch pipe. One thing that you have a right to do is deny survey permission, okay? If somebody comes to your front door from Kinder Morgan and wants to survey your property, tell them absolutely not, okay? The answer is no, okay? Do not let them do that, all right? And do not sign any forms that they give you, okay? If they start getting you aggravated, or they start raising their voices and it may be possibly a threatening tone, then call your local police department, Litchfield Police, at 424-4047, and they'll come to your door and they'll escort this gentleman or this woman off of your property, okay? So do not do that. Remember, it is your private property, and you have the right to refuse access to your land, okay? So just remember that. If somebody does come to your door or comes back again, okay, tell them absolutely no, okay? One thing that I encourage all Litchfield residents to do is to sign a petition, and you can do that online. The petition is to call upon Governor Hassan to stop the Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline. And you can do that by logging on www.newhampshirepipelineawareness.org. And there's almost 3,000 signatures already on that petition, okay? And your signature, it doesn't hurt for your signature to be on there, okay? It'll actually help, okay? Then they know some people from Litchfield do not want this project in town, okay? The petition says, and I'm going to read it, it says, Kinder Morgan's Northeast Energy Direct is a high-pressure pipeline carrying excessive amounts of natural gas through New Hampshire without a primary benefit to the state. It is a bad deal for New Hampshire that would take lands by eminent domain, likely raise energy rates, decrease home values, and threaten water quality across the region. We demand a more sensible course for New Hampshire, energy's future, with a plan that is flexible and forward-leaning while preserving our live, free, or die state. We demand the governor unequivocally oppose the forfeiture of New Hampshire lands and use of utility ratepayers' funds to construct the Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline. We will call upon Governor Hassan to stop NED, okay? So if you're interested in signing the petition, you can do that by logging on www.newhampshireawareness.org, okay? Now I have some breaking news for you that has just been released a few days ago. I would like to tell our viewers that the New Hampshire Municipal Pipeline Coalitions, which consists of the town of Litchfield, Amherst, Brookline, Fitzwilliam, Greenville, Mason, Merrimack, Milford, Pelham, Richmond, Rindge, Temple, and Troy, have hired an attorney, which is good news, okay? The attorney is Richard A. Canoff, to represent the towns affected by this pipeline, okay? He's a lawyer from Boston, Massachusetts. So we're going to see how that goes, okay? That's something very, very positive in our favor. We're going to use the legal system to try to stop Kinder Morgan from coming into our towns. On May 5th, 2015, the town of Litchfield, as well as the other towns of New Hampshire Municipal Pipeline Coalitions, which the towns I just mentioned, sent a letter to Governor Hassan, Senator Jean Shaheen, Senator Kelly Ayotte, Representative Annie Custer, Representative Frank Ginta, State Senator Kevin Avard, State Representative Jack Flanagan, and State Representative Christopher Adams, okay? Some of the highlights of the letter talked about that it is inappropriate to use eminent domain for the benefit of private corporations. The need for this project is better addressed by competing projects that would require less taking of land. The capacity of the pipeline exceeds the utility needs of New England. The proposed pipeline route impacts projected conservation land, watersheds, and aquifers. Additional energy companies have proposed projects to bring more natural gas to New England. It also talks about how the pipeline, when installed, would be within the right-of-way, according to Kinder Morgan, having little impact on adjacent land. And that is, frankly, not the case. It could be wider than the right-of-way in most locations, taking down lots of trees. It also talks about most municipalities are rural communities who value their open space, rural character, and conservation land. The pipeline route is through many parcels of land conserved by town conservation easements and groups such as the Society for the Preservation of New Hampshire Forests. And the letter was signed by each of the town's administrator and/or selectman chair. So that's really another positive thing that we got going for our towns as well. Now let's talk for a minute about Kinder Morgan. Kinder Morgan is a company based in Houston, Texas. It has approximately 11,000 employees. It's the fourth largest energy company in North America. It owns approximately 180 terminals. It was founded in 1997 by Richard Kinder and William Morgan. Richard Kinder, chairman and CEO, receives $1 a year. No bonuses, no option grants, no restricted stock. He claims he does not spend money on corporate jets, first-class airfares, sporting events, tickets, etc. The only problem is Forbes magazine estimates his net worth is around $12 billion. Did you know in June and October of 2013, Kinder Morgan paid a local Pennsylvania police station $50,000 to use law enforcement to deter protests to avoid costly delays on their pipeline? Friends to the north in Canada have turned down $800,000 from Kinder Morgan for a pedestrian bridge across a river, which would have amounted to 80% of the cost. The money was called a bribe by critics of the company. Let's talk about some of their accidents, okay? They had accidents in 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, and recently, if you saw the news, they just had another one in Texas in 2015. Okay? Pretty consistent record, don't you think? I think so. I think the representative from Kinder Morgan said when I asked him about their accidents, he called them just isolated incidents. Last year, Tennessee Gas Pipeline will pay a penalty of $210,000 and will fund $540,000 to clean up a program of illegal dump sites in Pike County, Potter County, Susquehanna County, and Wayne County in Pennsylvania. Kinder Morgan has been fined numerous times by the United States government for stealing coal from customers' stockpiles, lying to air pollution regulators, illegally mixing hazardous waste into gasoline, and many other crimes. Kinder Morgan's pipelines are plagued by leaks and explosions, including 2 large and dangerous spills in residential neighborhoods in Canada. Kinder Morgan was convicted of 6 felony counts after one of its pipelines in California exploded, killing 5 workers. In Louisiana, Kinder Morgan's terminal spills coal directly into the Mississippi River in nearby wetlands. The pollution is so heavy that the satellite photos show coal-polluted waters spreading from the facility into black plumes. The same site generates so much wind-blown dust that nearby residents want a class action lawsuit because their homes and belongings are so often covered in coal dust. In South Carolina, coal dust from Kinder Morgan's terminal contaminates the bay's oysters, pilings, and boats. Locals have videotaped the company washing coal directly into sensitive waterways. In Houston, Kinder Morgan's terminal operators leave coal and pet coke, a highly toxic byproduct of oil refining, piled several stories high on its properties. The company's pet coke operations are so dirty that even the firm's promotional literature shows plumes of black dust blowing off its equipment. In Virginia, Kinder Morgan's coal export terminal is an open sore on the neighborhood, coating nearby homes in dust so frequently that the mayor has spoken out about the problem. And these incidents are just the tip of the iceberg. In Oregon, Kinder Morgan officials bribed a ship captain to illegally dump contaminated material at sea, and the firm's operations have repeatedly polluted the Willamette River. Time after time, and state after state, Kinder Morgan has shown that it doesn't care about the environment, about the law, or about being a good neighbor to communities affected by its operations. Now, Kinder Morgan originally planned to route the Northeast Energy Pipeline through northern Massachusetts. After grassroots groups and several politicians, including Governor Patrick of Massachusetts, who pushed back against the plan, the developer began to explore alternatives. In December 2014, it was disclosed that the pipeline would be coming to New Hampshire. Now, the pipeline would strip all trees, 150 feet wide swath of land through 77 miles of pipeline. Also would drill 6 feet through solid granite to lay the pipe. It would cross through 17 towns. A little more than 63 miles of pipeline would be buried underneath existing power lines in the right-of-way owned by Public Service of New Hampshire. The pipe would be buried approximately 3 feet in the ground, along with 24 inches, as I said, spoke previously about, of consolidated rock. Specifically, it would go across 40 conservation lands, 155 wetlands, and under 116 bodies of water, including 18 rivers, about 8 miles of state forests, in parks, and from beginning to end, it would leak methane worse than CO2 from valves, pipes, and compressor stations. The project would pay the state approximately $17 million. The town of Litchfield would receive a little over $200,000 of that money. It would hire approximately 520 temporary workers, okay? And New Hampshire has the smallest need for additional natural gas of any New England state, but have to adopt the largest pipeline. This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And this pipeline the work is supposed to begin in 2017. Approximately 1,000 families will have to give up their right-of-way. These residents will forever have to deal with safety risks, possible explosion, and substantial increase for emergency services as the pipeline ages. Electrical interference from power transmission lines would increase corrosion of the pipe. The issue of electrical interference of buried pipelines has been known for over 30 years. The bottom line is that Kinder Morgan's utmost importance is profits. Okay, in 2013, investment research firm Hedeye Risk Management released a report claiming Kinder Morgan their business strategy. What their business strategy is to maximize profits and to starve its pipelines of much-needed maintenance. So let's face it, maintenance costs a lot of money. Wall Street Journal asked, is Kinder Morgan scripting its pipelines, unquote? After it charged the company with starving its pipelines of routine maintenance spending in order to return more money to its investors. Okay. There's a town in Richmond, New Hampshire that I got the article from the Keene Sentinel. And I'd like to read some of the article for you at home. The astonishment and jeers came from every corner of Veterans Memorial Hall Monday night. One woman even shouted, "Shame on you." If the crowd of more than 100 people from Richmond and surrounding communities wasn't riled up about a proposal to put a natural gas transmission line through town before, they were, after learning the thickness of the steel used for the pipe could be less than what it is installed in more populated areas. The Tennessee Gas Pipeline Company, Kinder Morgan Company, is proposing to build a pipeline to carry natural gas from shale gas fields in Pennsylvania through upstate New York and through part of northern Massachusetts and southern New Hampshire, before going to the distribution hub in Drake, Massachusetts. The proposed Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline would cross 71 miles of southern New Hampshire, including the Monadnock region, towns of Fitzwilliam, Richmond, Rindge, Troy, and Winchester. Other concerns raised Monday night included the pipeline's proposed route, eminent domain, potential environment effects, what justifies the need for pipeline beyond corporate profits, and Kinder Morgan's safety record. The question that started it all came from Chesterfield resident William P. Manter, who told the audience that his town stands in solidarity with Richmond against the pipeline. He then asked Kinder Morgan and Tennessee Gas Pipeline officials if it was true that the thinnest stainless steel piping allowed would be used for the portion of the pipeline that comes through Richmond, rather than thicker piping used in more populated areas. Did you value our lives less? He asked. He and others said that they were concerned thinner steel would put them at a greater risk should there be a problem with the pipeline. And this is something that possibly Litchfield should also be concerned about as well. That they can go within a parameter where they can actually use a thinner walled pipeline. Okay? So that's, I could see their concern. Okay, I would be very concerned as well. Okay, some information that I'd like to give you as well. This comes from the New Hampshire Pipeline Awareness.org. Okay, the route. The original proposed route would require breaking conservation easements, a terrible precedent to set for private projects. Construction would leave permanent degradation of our landscape, private properties, wildlife, forest, agricultural land, and aquifers. They also talk about tariffs. The New England residents could be burdened with additional tariffs on their electrical rates to pay for this private project that could generate enormous profits for Kinder Morgan and the gas producers. Financial burden for landowners. The payment for the easement on private land would be a one-time deal and is not much money weighed against the loss of property value. The presence of gas pipelines has historically had a severe negative impact on property values, rendering the properties it crosses virtually unsellable, possibly no longer eligible for a mortgage, and often with increased insurance premiums, which we will discuss with our guest tonight. The impact on water. The pipeline would create concerns about construction impact on our residential wells. Water quality could be affected during and after construction. Blasting could disturb sediment, causing it to flow to the home rather than resting safely on the bottom of the well. Water tables could also crack or shift during blasting, rerouting the water away from a well. Gas companies are currently exempt from the Safe Drinking Water Act and do not have to disclose the chemicals in the pipeline. A pipeline leak could contaminate water resources with undisclosed chemicals. Conservation land. New Hampshire residents are very proud of their conservation land, and they work to preserve it. While large tracts of conservation land may be inviting to pipeline companies, the permanent scarring for that purpose would not be in the public's best interest. The precedent of taking conservation land threatens future donations of private land for conservation. And there's no benefit in our homes. The pipeline would not, I repeat, would not bring fuel directly to our homes for heating and cooking. This would be a transmission line, not a distribution line or a service line. It would transport natural gas to facilities that can accept high-pressure natural gas, such as distribution facilities, power plants, and export facilities. I think I read an article a few days ago that said basically New Hampshire would use about 6% of this. Okay, so it's extremely low. Eminent domain. If FERC determines that there is a public need for the pipeline, they could grant the pipeline company access to the land under eminent domain, enabling private corporations to make substantial profits through the use of our precious private property. The environmental impact. This project would deliver fracked gas from New York and Pennsylvania, and the impact in those areas and to our climate would be devastating. We shouldn't be using tariffs on our electric rates and power of eminent domain to develop a resource that is damaging to our environment. There's also health and safety risks. There are serious concerns about the safety record of gas pipelines in general, and Kinder Morgan in particular. Okay, I didn't write this. Somebody wrote this that knows more about Kinder Morgan than I do. Okay, Gas leaks threaten sensitive aquifers, soil, and plant life. Explosions involving pipelines of this size and pressure actually occur and are catastrophic, with the fire being fed by many miles of fuel being shut off at the stations, leading to prolonged, extremely high temperatures to burn. Our community emergency response facilities are not equipped to deal with such concerns, and the cost of developing the appropriate capability would be borne by local taxpayers. That's another issue that we'll talk to our guest tonight about as well. Inflated capacity. A 2 billion cubic feet per day, the main pipeline far exceeds the stated need of 0.7 billion cubic feet per day for regional electrical generation. A need projected to occur only 10 to 27 peak demand days per year, for only a few hours of each of those days. Intended for export, the excess capacity of the pipeline could be used for export. As it arrives in Drake at Mass, it could be connected to Canadian Maritime. This would be an inappropriate use of the public's money in land, as the project would be a private for-profit venture. Not only is this inappropriate for use of a project, that it would be financed by tariffs on our electric rates, built using the power of eminent domain and possibly breaking conservation easements as well, but it means we would see minimal, if any, benefit as towns, a state, a region, or a nation. When the pipeline is used for export, then the stated reason for having the pipeline, to prevent rising prices for electricity with cheap domestic gas generation, would be suddenly impacted by market prices that customers in Europe and emerging economies like India and China will be willing to pay. The gas companies could see huge profits, but ratepayers would see no offset for the increase in our rates. The gas is not clean. While natural gas produces less carbon than coal or oil, when burned, the methane that leaks in drilling, flaring, transmission, and distribution is far more potent greenhouse gas than in carbon dioxide, and negates any gains over burning other fossil fuels. Simply, the pipeline is not needed. The pipeline is being touted as filling in a shortfall in fuel needed for electricity generation. The shortfall in generation energy has occurred only during very cold snaps. And the expanded infrastructure is a step backward. Building a permanent infrastructure for fossil fuel could ensure its use far into the future. This project represents a step backward in technology and several steps away from important national and state goals for renewable energy. Okay. One thing that I would like to talk about is these compressor stations, okay? One of the compressor stations is slated to go into New Ipswich, New Hampshire. The town has been trying to sell a piece of land over there for many years, and Kinder Morgan is interested in that site for their compressor station. These compressor stations pump gas through a pipeline by compressing the gas at intervals along the system. The engines run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The compressor stations are extremely noisy, the equivalent of a propeller plane flying overhead or a concrete mixer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And do you think we got problems? I'd hate to be New Ipswich, New Hampshire. There's also an issue with what is called vibroacoustic disease, okay, which are vibrations that are too low to hear by the human ear, okay. The cause is severe or long-term exposure to low-frequency noise that has a frequency less than 500 cycles per second. Natural gas compressors emit continuously, which has caused the body to constrict blood vessels. You have blood vessels in the brain and eyes also happen. And also, it's an environmental risk, okay? Healthcare professionals report that a large number of children who attend schools near compressor stations suffer periodic nosebleeds, which is suspected by formaldehyde, a byproduct of the combustion engines used in the compressor stations that pump through transmission lines. So there you go. I gave you all the information that I have that I know of, that's up to date. I gave you some of the information that the town has just done by hiring an attorney in Boston. That's a positive thing. The town has also sent, as I stated, a letter to our governor, and that is a positive thing as well. Now, I want to bring up somebody else who's positive. It's my guest today. I'd like to invite Al Latsha to come on up here, please. Hi, Al.
John, it's a
Hi.
pleasure to join you tonight.
Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it.
Not at
Have
all.
a seat. I figured I'd save my best friend here, my personal best friend. Obviously, we have our differences, but I consider you a very good friend. And thank you for coming on my first show. I really appreciate it.
Not
We're trying
at
to
all.
do something for the cable. We're trying to, my whole purpose of this is to try to get other people to try to come on public access TV on Channel 20, and hopefully we can get some people to come in and start contributing to our own cable station.
Absolutely, a very worthy cause. Our community is fortunate to have active people like yourself and any of the volunteer people that support the municipality at large clearly understand that and share your enthusiasm and your motivation, no question.
Thank you very much.
Our cable committee team, all of the people that work behind the scenes, the people that we don't see, all unsung heroes. Every town meeting, board meetings, activities, they're there to support us. And only recently has there been financial compensation equivalent to the services that they provide. For many years, it was a volunteer group.
Right.
But promoting shows like this and town awareness, absolutely critical. Your topics tonight, forefront for our community, as well as when we look towards our 5-year plan and our 10-year plan as a community for infrastructure services. When those types of events, our 36-inch gorilla that's looming over us presently, they demand attention by the public. They demand attention by our governing bodies, and first and foremost, by individual citizens like you and I, taxpayers of a community with the community's interest at large as the focus, and not political agendas or any other thing that gates a lot of our decisions.
Okay. I wanted to ask you a few things. You gave us some bullet points that you thought that would be interest to the town at large. I just wanted to talk to you about, you attended the meeting, as I did, at Campbell High School with Kinder Morgan several months ago. And you stated at the meeting that the Kinder Morgan representatives were unprepared and should give balanced answers to balanced questions. Could you elaborate a little bit on that for us and our viewers? For me and the viewers?
Certainly,
Sure.
John. There were a number of town residents at that meeting, a number of them quite distraught with the fidelity and quality of direct and prompt questions that would lead to unfavorable results or unfavorable reporting of potential incidents or facts, not speculation and not conjecture or hearsay, but the simple, cold, hard facts.
Right.
When Kinder Morgan was addressed by several members of the community, as well as myself, regarding the unpopular questions or questions of infrastructure,
Right.
of safety,
Yeah.
of potential impacts. You highlighted several as results of the New Hampshire Pipeline Awareness Organization, to be answered with "we'll get back to you," or indirect answers that left you with a question in your mind of integrity,
Right.
validity,
Right.
and truth in the answers.
Like when you were talking about, well, we'll get back to you, they were saying, or whatever, you know. A selectman, state representative, Frank Byron, he was trying to get them to actually sit down with the rest of the selectmen to get something, you know, to get some information from them, and he had an extremely hard time doing that. He even went to a meeting in Hudson, where he was actually yelling at them to try to get a meeting here in Litchfield, and it's pretty frustrating when a corporation like that wants to basically do business with you, but they just don't want to take. I think they take the town very lightly. I really do.
Well,
And they pretty much think that they can do whatever they want.
there's a position of whether they take the town lightly or not, and there's a position and strategy that big business organizes, orchestrates, and mandates. As you mentioned earlier, this is not a public utilities adventure. This is not a state-sanctioned public safety venture. This is a private company with a large investment history in the transmission for profit company, utilizing and taking advantage or trying to take advantage of government eminent domain properties to support free enterprise. And that is fundamentally wrong in today's current society. But when we get back to our community and back to our base, at that particular meeting at Campbell High School, the response to the questions were almost, in my personal opinion, rehearsed and deliberately not answered to the validity of what they presented.
Right, and some of the pictures that they were actually showing, where they had the pipeline go through, there's all grass, none of the trees are touched, you know, and I had questions about about that as well too. I mean, you know, like I mentioned previously, is that there's going to be some clear cutting going on around these power lines. And,
absolutely, by their own admission. While the easements are in place, the current property values and the property constructs, backyards, side yards, adjacent house, has been established for years in our community against the power lines.
Right.
Not clear cut and then gas lines and further danger zones and perimeters, as you brought up earlier this evening, regarding the placement of the pipe in physical proximity to the homeowner, the yard, the adjacent house across the street, all the way to and including up to 3/4 of a mile away. So when we talk in terms of there are 88 residents in town, that number, I believe, is the number of properties directly abutting the easement.
Right.
But there are government-sanctioned websites that do predictions of potential incidents regarding the transmission of natural gas. And when we take the numbers, you made a statement earlier this evening, John, that showed a 36-inch diameter
Right.
Um,
Let me get
pipe,
it
right.
right here. Show it to everybody once again in case you
Right.
missed it at the beginning. This is
So-
basically how big the pipe is going to be that goes to
So-
the college.
Take, for example, this visual is only the internal diameter of the pipe
Correct.
and the housing and sleeving and jacketing.
It could be much bigger.
So the gas volume is contained within this. The physical pipe itself will be much bigger than this. And then compound that with the other facts that you brought up this evening. In heavily residential areas, we could see wall thicknesses to 3 or 4 inches past the pipe. That's your safety zone. And when we talk about less populated areas, you could see wall thicknesses maybe 1.5 inches.
Right.
The significant difference there is the quote-unquote safety of margin that is federally accounted for. Now, as you can imagine,
And it's
if
also
we
about
go to
mon-
the
it's-
store,
It's
right.
also about money too, isn't it?
Well, and that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
If we go to Home Depot and we buy a 1/2 inch PVC plastic pipe for $1.98, whatever it is,
Right.
that same 1/2 inch Schedule 80 copper pipe is $14.57.
Right.
So now you can imagine a 36-inch diameter pipe that's 1.5 inches thick at something to the order, and stainless steel, by the way, and all of that, at something to the order of hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a foot
So we
versus a 4-inch thick pipe.
So we are talking about,
We're talking about a lot of money,
right.
not a few dollars, a lot of money.
Now, as I said, does it concern you that possibly Litchfield could end up with a thinner wall pipe, or is that
So we kind of alluded to that at the school meeting.
Yeah.
I personally have not done the research that brings up the federal guidelines for those actions. So I don't have a good answer for you, John.
okay?
But if I look at, we have Litchfield, we have Merrimack, 100 yards away, right? And the pipeline is going to go under the river, which takes it right through Merrimack. I doubt we're in the least populated.
Now, what about Campbell High School, Griffin Memorial High School, and
Right.
and Litchfield Memorial?
Right.
Litchfield
So
Middle
we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah.
We contacted a firm that the federal government uses out of Seattle, Washington. That is their EPA Emergency Disaster Response Team.
Okay.
I was in personal contact with one of their leading field engineers that supports, like the gas explosion in Texas,
Right.
for example,
Right.
or the Pennsylvania burning fields, for example. So this gentleman has firsthand knowledge. When I spoke to him, he led me to a website that actually does the federal predictions for these types of gas pipelines.
What'd you come
So
up with? Yeah.
I ran a scenario, and the scenario mimicked the technical information that was provided to us by
Kinder Morgan.
Kinder Morgan
You mean like the
at the
size?
school.
You mean like the size?
The size of the
pipe?
pipe,
Right.
right?
That was
If
in the
you
equation.
recall,
Right.
we got into some very technical questions.
Yeah.
What size of the pipe? What's pressure of the gas line?
Right. I think
How long
I think
between-
I think they said it was about 1,500 psi.
It is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there was a reason I was asking those very specific questions, because they become data input to these scenarios. So the scenarios don't lie. If there is contestment against the scenario, then did they provide us the correct information? If they didn't, well, then they lied to us.
Right.
And if they did, the scenarios federal government sanctioned. It's what they use.
Right.
So, for example, when we talk about a 36-inch pipeline running methane or natural gas at a 1,500 PSI input across a 36-inch diameter,
Daily. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That, and between checkpoints or stop valves, worked out to be 24,120 meters. So we have a 24,000 meters of 36-inch pipe that has a stop valve and a stop valve.
Right.
And let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's only put 1,400 PSI,
All right.
little margin, and let's assume a mean temperature day of 78 degrees. Reasonable, right?
Yeah.
In a scenario that represents 1.018, that's 1.018 inch hole in the pipe. 1 square inch
Okay.
hole against a 36 inch diameter
Pipe.
pipe.
Right.
That catastrophic failure would create a blast zone of approximately 1,016 yards at 2 kilowatts per square meter. That's a lot of technical jargon.
Right.
So let's put that into some plain words. That represents that farthest region,
So,
pain within 60 seconds of the event. When we move in closer, we talk about second-degree burns. And when we move into the prime zone or the red zone, that would be a circumference of 470 yards. 1,200 plus feet, give or take, right?
right.
Now, that's not the border house, that's the bordering house, the house across the street, and the house behind him. That is in the immediate incineration zone. These are not unfounded facts. These are validated facts. So when we link all the way back to your gauge of safety of margin pipe, if this were to go through, I would want the thickest pipe available,
Right.
because there is no coming back from a failure, as we've seen.
Correct.
2007,
Right.
2008,
Consistent.
on
right.
and on
Right.
and on and
Right.
on.
Right.
So we're not being critical or trying to be extremists. These are facts based on what I believe to be factual information provided by them.
Right.
So,
Another thing that you talked about, Al, at the meeting, Kinder Morgan, is that about the no infrastructure.
right.
So
So that
elaborate on that a little bit for us?
when we talk about catastrophic failure, Kinder Morgan likes to say, yes, we've had minor events here and there. When you look at their track record, as you have,
Right.
and I have as well, and I look at their federal documented cases, These aren't minor incidences that happen on occasion.
Right.
These are risks of the business. These are real. And when you compound that in a corporate private enterprise that is a for-profit organization, oh, well, if we skip maintenance this month, we can always do a little more next month.
Right.
Those types of activities, look at any major car company. They don't freely recall cars. They take a calculated gamble that the number of deaths versus the cost of the repair,
Right.
business-wise, will take the deaths until the federal government steps in and says, huh, right? And then you see this 8 million, 10 million unit recall, right? So we're not talking about potentials. These are everyday occurrences at the business level. These leaders, these multi-billionaires, don't make money by making $1 a year salary.
Right.
They make money on investments.
Right.
And it's that simple. So when we talk about infrastructure, oh yes, we'll send a team to help train, or you call us, we'll be there, what, in an hour? Let's go back to our disaster forecast. 60 seconds total incineration. 60 seconds second degree burns, and in 60 seconds, almost a quarter of a mile out, pain and agony. We'll be there in an hour, right?
Right.
You linked back and said earlier this evening the town would receive $200,000
Yeah,
approximately.
roughly.
Roughly.
Yeah.
And that's annual.
Right.
$200,000 doesn't buy a fire engine. It certainly doesn't put an ambulance in place. It doesn't add more police to the infrastructure.
Now, what about
Right.
what about first responder training?
First responder training, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not a fireman.
Right.
But as a community as being active in the community,
Mhm.
and having a son that is a fireman here, my former training at the National Fire Academy
Okay.
in Washington, when I was a selectman, I was very active with the fire department, tells me that we are woefully unequipped. My training in emergency management, I hold several federal degrees in emergency management, tells me that we are woefully undertrained and understaffed. When I asked the question about training and facilities and what infrastructures, we got what was, in my personal opinion, less than a professional answer.
Right. I think you said that. Yeah.
And my experience as an engineer for 40 years, as public community service for the past 25 years, tells me that we're getting a snow job. That's my personal opinion.
Right.
As a taxpayer and concerned citizen of this community, this is a farce. We do not have all the information.
Yeah, so
we don't have all the facts.
$200,000 would disappear at a blink of an eye.
Right.
I mean, it wouldn't lower
So-
the tax rate or anything.
No. So with $200,000, the first thing that comes to mind is compensate the people who
That are
are
affected.
directly impacted. So
Right.
those 88 families, anybody that's in that zero incineration zone should be compensated for their property loss and their increase in insurances, not offset the road tax, or a ton of salt this year, or whatever phase of the moon and rise of the tide
Right.
minutia, but the people of the town who are impacted directly out of pocket,
Right.
that won't see a penny of that profit, that those billionaires will be taking millions for on this
Someone wrote, Alan, in the Hudson Litchfield News for the thumbs down. It basically said that they are like a carnival workers, staying for a short time, then packing up and leaving, and never to be heard from again. Do you kind of feel the same way about them?
Yeah, well, if you look at their history, first of all, they're taking union workers to build the
500
construction.
Yeah, 520 temporary workers, right.
That's not 40 or 50 people from Litchfield, 40 or 50 people from the communities
Right.
at large.
Right.
Now, granted, we may need to provide special detail police,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which is a separate fund paid for, does not come out of the tax pot at large. But will we see a draw of talent from Litchfield's working class, you and me, that go to work every day,
Right.
and offset that? No,
Right,
probably not.
right,
Maybe one or two in some other communities.
yeah.
So when we examine what you're saying, Kinder Morgan, again, is a for-profit organization. You can take it to the bank. They have negotiated their labor costs and their estimated costs in their trade space for whether they commit to this or not.
Down to the penny, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't become a billionaire
Right.
by not watching your nickels, dimes, and quarters, right? It's pretty simple.
One thing that I saw at the deliberative session that you asked was, you talked about open spaces, meaning that the pipeline could actually be, open to the public, so to speak. And his comments were that, the compressor station is going to be fenced in, where the valves outside the pipeline will be fenced in. Can you
Right.
elaborate for us a little bit?
Well, once again, I'm not a security subject matter expert,
But you were worried about
But-
terrorism and
but
stuff
I
like
am
that.
worried about terrorism. I am worried about vandalism. It doesn't have to be terrorism,
Right,
right? Vandalism. I'm worried about things like if they happen to cross when we'll use the example when they tunnel under the river.
okay,
There is transitional spots where that comes in and out of becoming a tunnel underneath a river,
yeah,
and then transitions back to subsurface. Those are open and vulnerable spots. What security elements are there?
none. Did I-
Well,
yeah.
they certainly didn't allude to any. Now and let's be fair, that could be they don't want to divulge vulnerabilities. Fair statement. In the same token, they could have met with the Board of Selectmen in closed session to report on the security features that we don't have to worry about. Because guess what?
If you can get them.
We're on this side of the river,
If you
partner.
can get them into your town, yeah.
Well, that's if you can get them into your town. So when we talked about open accessibility, not only for security and for terrorism, open accessibility also leads to vulnerability of failure. If you did a stress analysis of the pipeline in a natural earth environment, we're in an earthquake zone, partner.
Yeah.
This isn't wake up and see the news.
Yeah,
Granite shakes, rattles, and rolls.
right.
And where are the weakest links? It's in your stress points. This is pretty basic understanding, right? You don't have to be a physicist or a rocket scientist. You don't have to be a geologist. People like you and I, You take a pipe, you can only bend it so many times before you're going to the hardware store and getting a new water line for your sink.
Right, right,
Same principle applies.
right.
So when we asked about open spaces, it's not just because, terrorism.
Yeah.
What happens if a vehicle, a drunk driver, whacks this thing at 110 miles an hour?
Whatever, yeah.
Just down here on 102. The house that got hit took out the whole damn kitchen.
Right.
This guy came across at 110 miles an hour, hit the house,
Right.
and bang, right?
Yeah.
Now the whole place is for sale.
Right.
But those are examples of what we need to focus on open spaces and what protection. And oh, by the way, if those open spaces are thin-walled pipes, even more
Of a risk.
of a risk.
Right. Let's get back, let's talk about just Litchfield specifically, about disaster preparedness training for the selectmen. Can you talk about that a little bit for us?
In my 3-year
Being a
tenure,
former selectman, right?
being a former selectman, I can speak to that. I can tell you that at the time, including myself, we were ill-equipped and undertrained as the custodians of the town.
Mhm.
Every selectman at that time should have had all the formal emergency management training courses as recommended by the guidelines. As much as I tried, I could not meet that objective.
Right.
Let alone when we talk about selectmen that has multi-termed legacy that still don't meet all those requirements.
So it does take.
Then there's been a move on foot of the town, and this isn't eye-opening news, that the selectmen at large are focusing more on the government of town and the administration of the town. There's been an effort to try and convince us at large that we need a, quote, town administrator for a town of, what are we, 7,800? So that responsibility now goes to a town secretary, secretary to the Board of Selectmen, whatever you want. We don't have a town administrator. So when I look at our former administration, I don't know that they had all the prerequisites. So there is a preset set of training. The fire chief is fully aware of what that training is for emergency management. And I believe that the selectmen and the administrator had deferred emergency management control to the fire chief.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm only speculating. I don't know that as a fact. I will tell you formally that there was not a selectman qualified. To my knowledge today, there still isn't a selectman qualified.
Probably not in any town, yeah.
Right.
Probably
So
not in any town.
that's the best of my knowledge on
Mhm.
emergency response.
Okay.
Furthermore, we used to have once a year town department heads and town administrators, right? Road, fire, police. We would have an exercise that demonstrated that.
Yeah.
Former Police Chief Iverson coordinated many of those. I don't know that we still practice that or not. I'm not. I
Yeah,
support
in
the
the loop,
Mosquito
Right.
Control District, but that's the extent of it. I don't believe. What I do believe, my personal opinion as a citizen and taxpayer here, is we could and should focus more on our selectmen and our town administration being more aware and better trained as a town mandate. If you want to be a selectman and sit in the big boy seat, you need these qualifications once elected.
Right.
If you want to be a town administrator, if we should ever vote to have one, you need these types of qualifications. I don't see that happening.
Right.
So again, awareness and training. That would then trickle down to the police department, the fire department. We now need training courses on disaster scenarios that demonstrate potential explosions. Now, something of that magnitude, you wouldn't be going in and putting the fire out. You would be controlling it.
Right.
But I will point to the facts again. We are a volunteer committee. If you add all the policemen, all the volunteer fire department, all of the road agents people, the incinerator people, if you add them all up, tell me you're going to cover a circumference in town of 1,000+ yards.
No way. Yeah.
You're not going to do it.
Right. Right.
However, if you have coordinated strategies and you practice these, the fire department has training, I believe, once a month. They train for things like car
All
accidents.
disasters, right.
They train for house fires, forest fire, you name it, they train it.
Right.
And they do a damn good job of it.
Right.
I'm sure the police department has similar training accidents for critical events.
Right.
So it's a burden
Right.
to us,
Right.
right? It's more of a burden.
One thing, Al, as I mentioned, that, the people at home could go to the New Hampshire Pipeline Awareness.org website to sign a petition and things like that. And what do you think that people in Litchfield can do to actually try to show their support in not having this pipeline come through town?
Well, John, you said it earlier. Get online, sign the petitions, let the politicians know
Right.
that you are concerned,
Right.
that you are uninformed or ill-informed. Let them know that you see no utility in a commercial adventure utilizing your public properties for private business. Now, the public utility, right, you have to come off the couch and at least make it to your computer.
Right.
Come off the couch and make it to this forum.
Yeah.
Or not even, come off the couch and get in front of your selectmen and make them aware that you are not a happy camper.
Right.
You are the one that put those 5 people in this chair. You are the one that can take them out of this chair. You are the one that tells them what and how you want your community
Right.
to be managed. If you don't tell them, they're going to guess at it.
Right. Everything's fine. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Status quo. So, again, we're all busy. There's no question in my mind.
So obviously,
We have to
could-
get
yeah.
engaged.
Obviously, we can write letters to our senator and delegation as well. That would help.
Right.
The more letters from Litchfield, the better. Correct?
Correct. We're,
I mean,
at one time, we had 2 representatives in Concord sit at our selectmen meetings.
Yeah.
So, in effect, when you come to the selectmen meetings, you can come in two roles. Because not only did you vote these people in, you voted them in for Concord as well. So you can come to public input, you can make the statements locally to your board to encourage your representatives to take the message from your community to the Concord floor. Go online, get active. Don't let this pass by, it's too important. And if you're concerned about your kids, if you're concerned about your welfare, if you're concerned about your community, you said it earlier too, John.
Mm-hmm.
We are fortunate in Litchfield to sit on one of the state's largest aquifers.
Right.
A pipeline going under the Merrimack is even closer to the aquifer. A catastrophic event, or even a minor event, will contaminate the aquifer.
Right.
That comes into all our wells, that comes into our farmlands. It's just horrendous that we would even engage in the thought of letting this go without getting proactive and supporting it.
I'd like to ask you two questions, and then if you have anything that you'd like to add, that's fine. I'd like to ask what your personal views of Kinder Morgan is, you personally as a resident. And the other question I had was, what do you think the chances of the pipeline actually coming through Litchfield?
So the first question is, personally, what do I think of Kinder Morgan?
Yes.
I think they are deceitful. I think they are a for-profit organization with a very focused objective, and that is a bottom line net return to their company. That's not derogatory. They are a large business.
That's what they're in
I
business
work
to do. Right.
for and have worked for the past 35 years a large international business.
Mm-hmm.
That's at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, you're a for-profit.
Right.
I believe that they have taken their company motto and misrepresented it in this instant by my personal experience and my research into their background.
Okay.
Simply do not trust them.
And what do you think the chances of it? I know you hate to bet and stuff, but what do you think the chances of this project actually happening? Based on what you've read and what you've heard and some of the stuff that you've heard from Concord.
Right. From
your gut feeling, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Everything I feel, I believe, and again, this is my personal opinion,
Right.
we as a community should be prepared to accept a rather abrupt and crude awakening of this pipeline, independent of what we personally feel, for two reasons, two primary reasons. First, they're federally backed.
Right.
And they have already revectored the line. You got to stop and say, it's in Massachusetts and it's going to end in Massachusetts. Why the hell did it ever come into New Hampshire?
Right.
Because enough political minutia, I can't say what I really want to say here, and they're coming up and over, right? That is a cost. Because it's been diverted, because we as a community, and I say this for living in this community for over 35 years, I don't believe we have enough horsepower to move it. I'm glad to hear that we're part of a coalition that's hired an attorney out of Boston.
Mm-hmm.
But I personally believe we need to drive hard to get as much value out of this to support it, because at the end of the day, you're gonna open your wallet, I'm gonna open my wallet, our taxes are going to go up.
Right. Just
This
because,
200,000
you live several miles away from this pipeline doesn't mean that you're not going to be
Right.
affected, right?
We will all
Everybody.
be affected
Right.
because our infrastructure for the community is going to be affected.
Right.
And if the Board of Selectmen do not take the advice of distributing this money to offset the community, our community property values are gonna go down. People aren't gonna wanna be living here, and it's bad news all the way
Right.
around. But I think at the end of the day, John, I'm not a gambling man,
Right.
but I would buy you a cup of coffee if you didn't think the pipeline isn't coming to us.
My last question, Al, is, like I was talked about earlier, is that, trees will be coming down and everything else. And this is such a beautiful town. I drive through this town and I look at the farmland and everything else. It's really beautiful. It reminds me of Pennsylvania when I used to go there, down to my grandfather's house. It's really a beautiful community here. What do you think people's perception of the town will be once they see this pipeline go through and start seeing the trees come down, and people that have been here for generations?
Right. The people that have been here for generations, John, unfortunately, like I said earlier, we don't have the horsepower. The community will suffer at large because incoming young people, they're only attracted to this town for one reason. And that's the quote unquote, we're a bedroom community. We got this huge conservation fund going. We've bought up millions of dollars of property. And all that will go right by the wayside when, for a 1,000-mile radius around that pipeline, you can't get insurance or you can't afford it.
Right.
Who the hell wants to live in that? Right? What attraction? We talk about a 5-year plan here. We talk about a 10-year plan. We're going to do all these wonderful things. We've been trying to get water into the town to promote industry, light industry.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We can't do that because we're a beautiful community. Now, we're going to cut trees down. We're going to violate wetlands. We're going to do all this minutia. All that goes by the wayside. And all that work that you did, that all gets hurt to some degree.
Right.
So you're spot on with your thought. Again, people have to get engaged. We
Right.
can't say that enough
Right.
to minimize the impact.
Right.
For every tree Kinder Morgan cuts down, for example, for every tree they plant 10 more somewhere, as an example,
Right.
right? For every easement, they pick up the insurance premiums on the houses they affect for the next 20 years, or the life cycle of the person who owns it.
Right.
Now we're talking about real compensation, and we're talking about real community value.
Mhm.
Or if they destroy, they take up additional wetland or conservation land, they replace it. But I don't hear any of that activity locally, John.
Right.
I hear a few people at the town transfer station, oh, we need to do something, we need to do something. I look at this beautiful room, and it's empty. Empty. Over something this important.
Right.
Engagement and awareness, John, and I thank you as a citizen and a taxpayer. Engage.
Right.
Right.
Al, thank you very much for being my guest today. I really appreciate it. As I stated before, we have had our differences of opinions, and that's great too, but I consider you a very, very good friend of mine, and I really appreciate and thank you for coming on my first show. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, John. Thank you for inviting me.
Take care of yourself, and
Yep.
I'll have you come back at another time. Thank you. For all you residents that may be interested in a pipeline sign like the one I have here, you can buy one. They're about $6 to $10 each. You can, if you want one for your yard, and you can go to www.pipelineawareness.org to get one. If you're interested in a T-shirt that says "No Pipeline" on it, you can. Those shirts are between $5 and $6 each. And you can also go to www.newhampshirepipelineawareness.org. Thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time right here. I'm your host, John Latsha, and that's in Litchfield.